What's good? I'm Kinnell, and this is Sinister Cinema, where we get deep into the guts of the stranger side of cinema. Just letting you know with this little bit at the start that we now have a Patreon. Sub up to that and you can get all these episodes early and ad-free, so you won't even see this bit at the start. You get them a few days before the main episodes drop out. We've got some great guests coming up. We've got some studio episodes. We've got some Zoom episodes with some fantastic rappers talking about the films they love and the films that influenced them. We got a lot going on there. Plus, you get some bonus content like film reviews, all that kind of thing. I don't need to explain this to you. You know what a Patreon is. But yeah, it's patreon.com/Kinnell Sinister Cinema. So check that out. Peace. Yes, people. What's good? I'm Kinnell, and this is Sinister Cinema, where we get deep into the guts of the stranger side of cinema. Kinnell Sinister Cinema is brought to you by Forgotten Sons Apparel. Check them out at ForgottenSonsApparel.co.uk. Forgotten Sons Apparel is a York-based streetwear brand drawing inspiration from alternative culture, tattoos, film, classic TV and cartoons from our childhood. In our own words, if you like our stuff half as much as we do, then we like it twice as much as you. I'm a big fan of this brand and I love the guys who make it. They've supported me for years, way before I was podcasting. They supported me in my battle rap career. You might have seen me rocking some of their garments on Don't Flop and other leagues. I love Forgotten Sons Apparel and I'm urging you all to check them out at ForgottenSonsApparel.co.uk. Right, now on with the show. Hey yo, what's good? It is Mr. Always Had a Buzz of every rhyme I wrote and everybody want to know me like the Wi-Fi code, Kinnell himself, and I am back for the first time in 2024. Yeah, Happy New Year. Hope you had a good Christmas and all of that thing. And the first thing I've got to kick off with is a massive thank you to everyone who downloaded Your Last Christmas. It was my first video game release, little mini game on Itch. And yeah, thank you to everyone who downloaded that. Thank you to everyone who shared the trailer. And thank you so much to the people who donated. I put it up as pay what you want. Wasn't expecting anyone to donate, but a few people did. And times are tough around here, so that was appreciated. So yeah, after you made one game, you make another one, and we're going big this time. And yeah, I am pleased to announce that as of last week, I have incorporated Sinister Cinema Studios Limited. That's right. I'm officially an incorporated company, an incorporated games developer, if you will, developing fucking games. And we got a big project in the works as we speak, currently in pre-production. There's what should we call it? I feel it's way too early to be giving things away, but I'm collaborating with some names that you may very well be familiar with, including some absolute UK legends. But you won't be hearing about that for quite some time unless you're subbed up to the Patreon. Now, obviously, with all this going on, I'm not going to have as much time for podcasting, but I'm still going to make sure, like, from this moment forward, that we're going to have some kind of content on the Patreon every week. It'll either be, what should we call it, a podcast, such as what's happening now, or it'll be, what should we call it, a little devlog, a bit of update on the development of the game, and it's all going to be kept completely, strictly off social media. So if you want to know who's involved and what's happening with it, that'll be the only place you could do it. And maybe I'm going to be sharing some test footage, what should we call it, and maybe I'll do a few little giveaways. If I've got any little like mini test games or mini test levels, I might put them up there for the Patreons. Obviously, like I've been fading off on the podcast thing and I'm back at it now. But what should we call it? Thanks to the remaining patrons, because it's been a tough one. But I'm going to make sure you're well rewarded. And anyone sign up now, I'm going to make sure there's plenty of good stuff for you. So yeah, 2024 Sinister Cinema Studios Limited. It's real. It's registered with Companies House. Flipping, I've had to learn a lot of what we call things I didn't know about business this week. I had to learn some shit about opening a bank account. You know, in the days of like OnlyFans and crypto and all these other suspect online things, when you're opening a first-time business account with no previous business standing, they look into you. Some banks, like all banks, need evidence, and the only evidence I had was my itch.io page where I'd actually made a game, so I thought that was pretty good. Some of them go deeper when they're looking into that. Some of them find your socials. Some of them find your podcast. Some of them phone you up saying, before we can proceed with your application, we need to ask you some questions about this weird shit you've said on a Scouse comedy dick joke podcast. These are things that happen. But yeah, that's what the delay was about anyway. But as a result, we're back in business now. And if anyone needs to know which banks don't go in that deep when you're trying to set up a business, shout your boy. I've got the hookup. But yeah, we're back, and we're let's get back to what Sinister Cinema is about, which is cinema that is cinema. And one of my favorite sources for bringing on cool guests is Ghouls magazine. So here is a fantastic contributor among many other journalistic enterprises to Ghouls magazine, introducing Kim Morrison. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Are you safe? And how have you been and all that?
Yeah, not too bad. Just kind of getting on with the the new year starting and trying to get used to it. But apart from that, all good.
Okay. We like to do some plugs up front on what we call it, this show, because some people don't make it to the end of podcasts, and I want to make sure the maximum promo is available possible. So do you want to let people know where to find your work?
Yeah, so as you said, write for Ghouls magazine. I have a column there about motherhood and horror, and I've also got my own blog called Little Red Horror, which tends to just be a mix of stuff, but mainly just bananas, very specific lists about horror films.
Yeah, you're really good with the lists. Like, I've noticed this. Like, that's something that, like, I haven't checked as many on your blog, but it's like, if there's ever like a cool, weird niche list, even if it's an area that I know, there's always some shit I haven't heard of it on Ghouls magazine. Like, always your name at the top.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, I do have a big like Trello board of just every instance of specific things I see in films until I get enough to write a list. And I'm like, oh, I've got 10. I can write a list now. So yeah.
Is that what you go for? You go for the 10?
Well, I try and mix up. Sometimes some ones end up being like huge. Like I think I did one about bathroom scenes that ended up being like 20 something. It just depends. I think if you know it's something that's going to have a lot of mileage, you kind of maybe save it for more. But some of them are quite niche, so I try just at least get 10.
Yeah, and you did one of one of the articles for Ghouls magazine that I personally sort of got the most from, because, like, as I say, I like to follow Ghouls because I need a different perspective. I don't need the white dude perspective because I can just watch the films and get it. But your article on rape revenge, I believe it's the highest, like the most read article on Ghouls magazine.
Yeah, it was the highest one for last year, anyway, and it was all like rape revenge films, specifically the ones directed by women. Yeah, it's I enjoy that genre, as weird as that always sounds, I think, to say, but I think it was cool to draw attention to the newer ones and the ones that are directed by women for a slightly different take over the classics.
Yeah. That's an excellent article. I believe, like, everyone should have a read of that. I reckon if you read that, that's the kind of thing that'll get you subbing up to Ghouls. But yeah, incredible piece of work. Like we mentioned a couple of subjects for potentially talking about today. I don't think this podcast is the place where, like, rape revenge is best discussed, really, because there's better places. Go to Ghouls. Yeah. But so instead we're talking about one film, or possibly several films, and a book. We're talking about Pet Sematary. Yeah, and you're rocking the t-shirt there, like
I am. Yeah. You can't see all the stuff to the arms, but there's like a little Zelda on the arm, and like the Ramones are on the back. So
yeah, I think we're gonna mainly be most of the discussion probably going to be around Mary Lambert's classic. But what's your relationship with Pet Sematary? Like, your book first, film first, or?
I think I was the film first, when I was quite young. I remember I was quite a big Stephen King fan when I was younger because my mum and dad were really into him and they had loads of his books in the house and things. But I think I knew that I probably wouldn't have the attention span to read the books because they're usually quite massive. So I remember watching the film quite a lot when I was younger because I think it was on TV quite a lot. And then I've read the book. I've read it a few times now. I think 2 or 3 times, but I think I maybe read it for the first time like 10 years ago. And it's yeah, it's one of my probably my favorite Stephen King book actually. I think it never fails to be like scary, especially because a lot of the scariness is really just stuff to do with like being a parent and having kids and stuff. And I think since I've had my daughter as well, like I was rewatching the film today, I was like, man, this like hits even harder. I think so yeah, I've been a fan of the film for ages, but I think it's probably the Stephen King book that I've read the most as well, because it's just I think it works every time because you know what's gonna happen. I think even when it's the first time you watch it, you know what Lewis is going to end up doing. So I think repeat viewings and readings don't really like kind of ruin that at all. It just makes it probably more chilling.
It's quite interesting to sort of compare the different versions of Pet Sematary because, as you say, like flipping Stephen King, we're peak cocaine era Stephen King. Like he is putting in the hours at the typewriter. There is a lot of words. Like flipping, we're talking very thick books. So I think this is like one of the few examples. You know, there's been some like great films made from Stephen King's work, and there's some great Stephen King books, but it's very rare that they both end up being bangers because there's always so much like editing and editorializing that has to take place in the translation.
Yeah, I think because this was one of his shorter books, so I think there obviously is chunks of stuff that get kind of trimmed out, but I don't think you really notice it, and I don't think it kind of feels any worse for it. There's just a lot of the weird stuff for like the Wizard of Oz things that that his wife's kind of dealing with to relate to her sister, and all the kind of like I guess a lot more of the Ramones references and things get cut, but I don't think he really I don't think the film feels any like worse for it. You don't really notice. There's not really any, though I always get annoyed that every version is like Judd's wife doesn't exist. She's a really good character in the book and she sort of adds a lot of stuff. So I'm always quite sad when she kind of gets removed. But I think apart from that, I think it's a fantastic book and a fantastic film. I think they did really well at adapting it and not sort of losing any of the like the heart of it and the grief and the kind of character building as well. I notice how much time they spend in the film sort of just with the characters and establishing the family before anything actually really creepy happens, which I think was a good shout and a good like way to transition.
Yeah, I think like I sort of see that as like what Mary Lambert like brought to the adaptation, because like when you've got to edit stuff out, you know, the you know, I mean, like nowadays, particularly, it's more about get to something scary early on to hook the viewer's attention in the streaming age and that. But that always kind of existed. And if something's got to get cut, it's generally got to be the plot. And like there was a lot that was cut, but I think like that's where Mary Lambert's genius in the adaptation really comes into it for me, is like keeping the heart, like you say.
Yeah, I think she because she directed the sequel as well, so I think she kind of went a bit more bananas with the sequel and like the body horror and the over the top stuff, but kind of kept the original very close to the book. So it's quite good because I think they make a good. I love the sequel as well, but I think it's a good kind of double pairing of if you want a more kind of grief family based story, or if you want one with like Clancy Brown as a weird zombie trying to kill you. It's a good combination.
Yeah, I think I might have seen like Pet Sematary 2 before I saw Pet Sematary. Like I might have like up until 2019. I think I was complete reverse order on the whole thing.
Yeah, they're both good. I mean, I like Mary Lambert's horror stuff. She did the third urban legend film as well, which
Ah,
not a lot of other
Bloody
people
Mary.
like, but I love that film. And I think as well,
Yeah.
I think like I've spoken about this before on many occasions, but again, I think you can feel Mary Lambert's like influence in that, because I think she tried very hard to tell Mary's story in a very like sort of sympathetic way. And I think, yeah, you can kind of feel the kind of stuff that she had from Pet Sematary. So I think she's a great sort of director for these kind of stories, and maybe taking something that seems a bit like wacky and turning it into something a bit more heartfelt.
Yeah, flipping. I've got a lot of time for that urban legend, Bloody Mary. Like, I don't know if it is so much underrated as underseen, because a lot of people just didn't turn up for it. But like, I really meet someone who like has actually seen it, but they love it and all.
Yeah, no,
Because it's
it's
nothing to
great.
do with the previous two, is it?
No.
It's prom night 2, Hello Mary Lou, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have said that before as well. It's yeah, it's great though. It's like it's yeah, what if urban legend was supernatural, and like why not? But yeah, it feels like it could be a remake of Prom Night 2, which is, I mean, also a good thing. I feel like it's got a lot of good stuff going for it.
And shout out Prom Night 2, like that was another one from kind of like the era of Pet Sematary. You know, it's a it's a VHS rental era movie to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hang on, I'm about to sneeze. I'm gonna. Yeah. No, I'm not. Missed it. That was very disappointing. But yeah, so like I had a question before I was about to sneeze. But yeah. So like what when did you first like see the film? Like what kind of setup was that? Was it very young age? Got the got the video when you shouldn't have, or
I think I was maybe like 10 or something. My mum was pretty lax on me watching a lot of horror stuff if it wasn't like people getting murdered. Like I didn't get to watch a lot of slashers when I was a kid. I remember having arguments wanting to watch like Halloween and stuff when it was on the TV, and I wasn't allowed. But things where it was just like, yeah, people dying but not getting chased by murderers was fine. So I think I was maybe about 10, and I used to watch it on the TV, and then I at some point upgraded to I got a box set of both the DVDs together, which is probably when I saw the second one for the first time, because I don't think I'd seen it before that. So it's been a pretty staple kind of constant watch through there was that, and like the It mini series were like my two kind of, and Salem's Lot actually were like my three kind of Stephen King, probably watched a bit too young films. And yeah, like I used to just like Pet Sematary because I really enjoyed all the stuff like when Gage kind of comes back at the end and it was all creepy. And I think like, yeah, the older you get and the more you watch it, and also like becoming a parent and stuff, you kind of realize how good the rest of it is as well. Like it's not just Zelda being creepy or like Gage coming back at the end. Like there's a lot of good stuff kind of the whole way through. So yeah, I think I must have seen it when I was about 10 or something, and probably not quite got the full scope of what Stephen King was going for, but still appreciated it's really, really creepy. I definitely like it kind of more every time I watch it.
yeah, like I want to go back to what you said about like how like one of the biggest emissions is Judd's wife, and it really is like that's one thing that does make like the film like kind of crazy, really, because like pretty much the first third of the book is, you know, Creed bowls into town, sets up shop, probably should put a fence near the flipping road, doesn't bother, but he does save Judd's wife's life. And, you know, there's that bonding and that father-son relationship thing going on.
Yeah, and I think because in the film, like Gage almost runs on the road right away when they first arrive. I can't remember if that happens in the book, because it's been a while since I read it. But I guess that's what kind of sparks off their relationship in the film. But yeah, in the book, like Norma's like, yeah, there's the whole, it allows like Rachel to bond with the family as well, whereas we don't really get that in the film because it's mostly just Lewis and Judd talking. And also when Norma dies, that's sort of, because I mean a lot of the story is about death in general, and sort of Lewis and Rachel's conflicting opinions on death because he's a doctor and she's had this trauma with her sister when she was younger, so they have very different opinions on it. And I think like her funeral is sort of like Lewis exposing like Ellie and things to the funeral, and Rachel decides not to go because she's not like feeling well. They kind of replace that with the kind of house caretaker character in the film so that they can have a funeral. But yeah, it's quite interesting that they leave that out. And then it means as well when Gage is like tormenting Judd at the end, right before he kills him, there's stuff in the book where he talks about like, you know, like I've seen Norma in hell and she's telling me all this stuff. Like we don't get like that either, which is quite sad because I think that sort of adds to the horrificness of that death scene for Judd as well.
Yeah, I think that was something that was again a very good call for Mary Lambert, because like flipping, you know, like basically when Gage comes back, was the year after Child's Play, basically turns into Chucky. But like in the book, like he's like, you sir are a cuckold. Like, and like what should we call it? And in the book, in that context, it works. It really creepy. But having that little kid suddenly talking like a flipping like Sherlock Holmes arch enemy or something, like I don't think that could have been like pulled off well.
Yeah, no, that's true. Actually, I do think because the film's only like an hour and 40 minutes long, I think they did quite well to, even though it is a shorter King book, to still like condense it in a quite a lean story and never kind of have any extra stuff. So it does make sense to have cut like her character out and sort of miss on all those bits. But those are some of the best bits in the book, I think. So, but then it's like you said, it's good to have two different versions of the same thing. They don't have to be exactly the same. So it's nice. She popped up and she was in Pet Sematary Bloodlines. She got to appear in a film somewhere, but just as the younger version of herself. So she's been on screen at least once.
Well, that's good to know. It's good to know she's at least managed to show up.
Yeah, exactly.
And be alive.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Pet Sematary Bloodlines, full disclosure. I was going to watch it and I didn't do it. I've been explaining the podcast where I make Epstein jokes to financial institutions.
It's not the best use of your time, I would say. I think as a Pet Sematary fan, I would recommend watching it, but it's a strange one. And they also say sometimes dead is better about 74 times. It's quite.
Of course they do.
Yeah. It's quite.
What I want to know is like who's playing Judd in Bloodlines?
Oh, I can't remember. It wasn't anyone I recognized. I think the only person I recognized was David Duchovny, and he's playing like the guy that comes back from the dead's dad. But apart from that, yeah.
Yeah, the kid who went to was it he died at war or something?
Yeah, Timmy Baterman, I think it is. Yeah,
yeah.
He's his dad, but I think that's the only recognizable person that I can remember. Oh, actually, no. What's his face? The kid from E.T. that's in all the Mike Flanagan stuff. He's in it as well. I can't remember his. That's terrible. Those two, those guys are in it. Everyone younger, I had no idea who they were as actors, but yeah.
Yeah, what I want to know is do they do the accent?
I don't think it was as strong mean as like Judd or the kind of housemaid did in the original film. But yeah, I think there's an attempt was made to sound like they were from Ludlow.
Yeah, because like Fred Gwynn's like main accent is iconic, and like. Yeah. I was like flipping. It was something. It wasn't until like much later in my life, like maybe with since I've been battle rapping and going to America, that I've flipping found out that like people from Maine actually talk like that.
Yeah, it's a great accent. I love it.
Yeah, flipping. Like that. I do think like what should we call it? It is something that the book does better. Is like because it has the time to do that bonding with them. it does kind of make the bit more sense to the sort of central conceit, because, like, you know, like showing him what the Pet Cemetery does, pretty bad decision, and like I think you kind of need that relationship to make it work. Whereas, like, in like all the film adaptations, he's like, "Hey, your cat's dead. Grab a bin bag, grab a shovel, come up here. This is sick."
Yeah, I think you get a bit more of a hint in the books that, like, maybe Judd's being like influenced by the Pet Cemetery as well, and like maybe doesn't have the most control over himself. Whereas, yeah, it seems quite. I think the choice between telling him to go and buddy church, and then, yeah, kind of giving him, not that he encourages him to go and bury Gage, but he kind of gives him more information before he goes and buries Gage. It seems a bit like, yeah, he should probably just have stopped talking. I think they do an all right job at sort of establishing the relationship. But yeah, we don't get those, like, they spend a lot of time just sort of sitting on his porch and like having long kind of conversations about stuff that have happened, like in the town and things, and their lives. And then obviously because his wife's there as well, they kind of spend more time together as a family. I think they actually, like, in the book, do they not spend like Thanksgiving together? Whereas in the film, that's kind of when Rachel and the kids go away. But yeah, I think they they kind of do an all right job in the kind of the rushness of it. But it does seem a bit bananas how willing he is to just like kind of take him up there to show him for the sake of the cat. It's a bit, and then yeah, feels a bit guilty about it after Gage dies, because he kind of thinks it's been all connected, which I think they do a kind of good job of this film of hinting that the cemetery kind of had, or the burial ground beyond it, I should say, kind of has its own power. Because literally the minute the film starts, like when Ellie is playing on the swing, she's like looking at the path, and it's like it's kind of pulling them there. And then like Lewis finds himself like out there later, kind of just staring up at it. It's this kind of idea that there's just this pull in the area, and that, you know, I guess if Judd didn't tell him about it, he probably would have found out about it somehow. It seems like he's been marked kind of the minute he turns up, to end up there.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame, really, that if they were going to like a plan building a road through there, like, you know, bit to the other side,
I know
could have dealt with it all, backfill a lot.
It's bananas how, like I said, like Gage almost gets run over within about 5 minutes of coming out of the car when they first rock up. I think the first thing you would have done would be to put a fence up, or to at least fence off a chunk of the car. It seems, I think just, you obviously read about it in the book, but just seeing those huge trucks, like every time they go past and how frequently they go past in the film, they're just like this constant reminder. I don't think you would let your 2-year-old or however old Gage is meant to be like anywhere near it, kind of unattended. So yeah, it does seem a bit daft.
Yeah, flipping. How gutted would you be though? The whole conceit is like they're moving out of Chicago. They're moving like away from traffic. I've got to say, like, you know, it's some bad foresight not checking that there's not a massive road next to the place in the country you get in.
I know, because obviously, like, the rest of the family don't know that Church died, but like, yeah, even Lewis having Church die, and that's not enough to like encourage him to put some kind of blockade up, or just keep a closer eye on his kids. Because even Ellie, she's only like what, like 8 or 9 or something. Like, she's not that. My kid runs out on the roads without looking both ways. Like, most of the time when we're going to school, like, she would be flattened in an instant if we looked next to that road. I don't know why they wouldn't like put something up. But I guess it's, yeah, like you said, they've kind of moved out of the big city and they think they're safer, and they're in the country, and there's just this, this kind of, they don't really see it as a threat, and it kind of ends up screwing up everything.
Yeah, it's is that one of the that is something I'm quite interested in. Like, given this film has been like a sort of a constant for you throughout your sort of horror watching life, is that one of the elements that you kind of like look at like slightly differently since becoming a mother?
Yeah, I think so, because I think you always thought it was a bit careless, I guess, that they kind of let that happen. And again, I'm aware that there's meant to be a kind of uh, pull from the cemetery, and it's maybe kind of changing things from how they would happen. Like the kite gets pulled away, and Gage goes and chases after it and things. But I just, yeah, it sort of it's terrifying because I think yeah, even just now when I'm out, like I said, my kid's 8, so you think it'd be old enough to not worry as much. But when we're just like crossing the road, if I go and get her from school and she's like talking to her pals, they'll just like walk out into the road and not even pay attention. So you're constantly just like I'm constantly like grabbing her by the hood of her jacket. And she's like, "Why are you pulling me?" I was like, "Because you're not paying attention." So I think yeah, what like rewatching the film and just seeing, I guess, how easily something like that can happen, even when you think you're paying attention, how quick everything can kind of go wrong. It sort of adds like another element of horror to it that I probably didn't get like the first time around. It was just like, oh, that was kind of sad that kid's died, but now you can sort of feel that extra layer of the grief and the way that it goes through Rachel and Lewis in like different ways. Like she just sort of kind of shuts down. She doesn't really cope with death. Anyway, Lewis decides like I'm a doctor and I understand death, so I'm going to find a way to fix this, and then just makes an increasingly terrible series of decisions that just makes it go even worse. So
Yeah. The one adaptation that does deserve calling out is, I've got to say, like a few years ago, I checked the audiobook version with your man who's Dexter reading it, and that's probably the best like audio fiction book I've ever heard. I'm not a big fan of them, but like I was like, actually, like, yes, this is very, very good.
I have heard a few people say that actually. I haven't listened to it. I've listened to Michael C. Hall reads Breakfast at Tiffany's, which is obviously a very different book, but he was a very good like audiobook reader. And yeah, someone had said that his version of Pet Sematary was amazing. So yeah, I've read it a few times. I was debating maybe getting the audiobook to give it a listen, because I think I think I've listened to a couple of Stephen King books via audiobook, and when there's a really good like actor involved, it would be good. So I think it would be fun to hear to hear him reading it, because yeah, he's got a good voice for audiobooks.
He does well with his main accent and all. Like he does the main accent, but flipping, he's not cartoony with it. Like
Nice.
flipping, like I think it's one of the few times I've really heard good acting chops be displayed in an audiobook.
Nice.
One thing I will say is a problem with the audiobook is, like, I say this is probably like the best fiction, certainly the best horror fiction audiobook I've ever heard. And it's also what put me off listening to like horror fiction audiobooks, because I was like listening to it in work, like, you know, like flipping. This was when iPods were still a thing. Yeah, I'd have a phone and an iPod separately. What the hell was that about? Like, with stuff downloaded onto it. And I was listening to the audiobook in work. And the fucking scene where your man's wife gives him a hand job in the bath, that seems to go on for a very, very, very long time in the audiobook. Or maybe it just feels like a lot longer than it is when you're trying to do your job and you're surrounded by people and you suddenly become very aware of like, do my headphones have headphone bleed?
Yeah, Stephen King is very good at writing some very weird sex scenes. So I can only imagine what that one getting reenacted was like.
Yeah, flipping. It was the first time I sort of it was the first time I clocked one of like I know it when people post it on like oh, look at this fucking like you know, man trying to write a woman, or look at this man trying to write a sex scene, like, you know. I don't read much, so what should we call it? Like, I only really like see the examples, but that was the first one I noticed in the wild, because it felt like a very, very long time I was listening to fucking an elaborate fucking description of your man getting fucking wanked off with a flannel, and then then literally like 5 words at the end, and then they had sex. End of chapter.
Yeah, I think the film does a good job of like showing them as a really nice couple and a nice family without having any anything too like explicit in it. I think they did a good job of kind of setting that up so they actually, because I think a lot of horror movie families, especially the dads, are usually absolute shits. Like, especially when it's one of those ones where they like move across the country and no one's seen the house and the dad picked it and everything goes wrong. I think they can be really terrible characters sometimes, but I think they did a good job of in the film making you like Lewis as a husband, and Rachel as a mum, but just even seeing them with the kids, like just there's loads of just scenes where you walk in and like Lewis is just like playing with Gage or like sitting talking with Ellie, and it all seems very like genuine, which is I'm assuming that they did on purpose so they could like fucking rip your heart out when everyone starts dying. It makes it even more hard hitting.
And that comes a lot down to the direction, I think, primarily because your man who plays Creed, he's not a good actor, is he?
Yeah, he's not the best, and I have heard a lot of people say that, but I think I think he just comes across as a really good like a dad and a husband and things, and I think you sort of because there's a couple of scenes. I think they're all kind of related to when Gage dies, when he's like down on his knees, like kind of screaming and stuff, and he's not too good at like any like heightened emotions in any direction. But I think I
think it's like the family stuff like sort of works because the scene feels authentic.
Yeah, I think they spent the time putting those scenes in to like kind of set it all up and show you, because a lot of the book as well is just like them in their house like doing stuff, and it's building up to Gage dying, and he doesn't die until about halfway through the film, and then that the next half's just like I said, Lewis making horrible decisions. But he's not he's not an amazing actor, but I do think for just all the kind of quite normalish stuff, they all feel very good as a family. It makes you sort of love them. But he's a bit, when he's covered in like Gage's blood and like down on his knees, like he's screaming in the sky. It's not.
It's like flipping. It's like 2 degrees from garbage day or something like, you know. Yeah. There was another thing like flipping. I never really got like good answers on like my theory on this, like, because another thing is like that's cut out, and there was definitely right to be cut out because it doesn't quite sit right with me in the book, is the whole thing about the father-in-law. Is that like I didn't pick up on it when I read the book, and like, you know, maybe I just wasn't aware of the kind of like tropes, like flipping like when I was reading it as a teenager or whatever, and like, you know, I was more aware of it like, you know, as like an adult who's like sort of dabbled in the world of conspiracy and whatnot, but like the characterization of the father-in-law is like a bit kind of anti-Semitic problematic in the book.
I can't actually remember, because we only get little. I remember them being horrendous in the book. We spend a lot more time with them, whereas in the film it's just little. It's really just him at Gage's funeral being a terrible person. But I can't really remember the stuff in the book.
Yeah, it was like on that like listen to the audio book, which would have been like just before the remake came out. Like I was listening to it, I thought, fucking hell, this is a bit much. He's there going, oh, just imagining the evil father-in-law with his book of money and fucking like it's like it sounds like a bit tropey, like, and like, I always wondered like flipping, because it felt a bit personal. Because the line was because the whole thing was that the father-in-law didn't like Creed. He was like, I'll pay you however much from my hoarded money that I'm really trying to avoid tropes at the minute, like, and that's not just because I've had a bunch of incidents with the bank, because obviously banks are owned by a wide variety of shareholders, but yeah, like he's trying to pay off this deadbeat deadbeat doctor from like what should we call it, dating my daughter. Like it like that doesn't feel like something that are the deadbeat doctors.
I know, right? Because you don't really
that feels to me more sort of something like I can imagine a deadbeat not yet published writer a father-in-law wanting to get rid of. Not so much a doctor.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, because we don't really know about a lot of what their life was like before they moved to Ludlow, but he's kind of like what's the word, like kind of downsizing his doctor job so that he can go and work in the university and so that it's more chill and things. But yeah, you assume like beforehand he was quite successful. So it seems that they're just not like as rich as Rachel's family is kind of portrayed to be, but it is a weird it's a weird characterization. The fact that he has such a problem with enough of a problem with him that like blames him for killing his grandkid, basically. Yeah.
So like I feel that's got to be something personal from like Stephen King's history. Like I reckon there was a father of a girlfriend that like the fucking alcoholic, cocaine addicted, like because it's such a nasty characterization.
Yeah.
And like it makes no sense. Like I don't want my daughter associating with doctors. Like it just doesn't tally up logistically. It's presented well in the book, and you don't realize that. It's something like I realized only recently. And like I've got this theory that like no one that Stephen King has been like exercising a lot of like what should we call it, petty his book have just for a long time just been like him exercising petty beefs that he had as a teenager and in his early 20s, because like every bully in a Stephen King book is the exact same greaser character.
Yeah.
It's the exact same guy. And it's obviously just like one guy from Maine that beat up like flipping 11-year-old Stephen King in 1957. And he was still holding that grudge well up to the 90s. Every character is the same gradually. Like he gradually adds more and more layers of sexual abuse to them in every book. Like, so like, once I noticed that, I've like started to try and like when I'm reading the books, I'm like I always try and pick like if a character is particularly harshly characterized, is this a Stephen King beef?
Yeah, I mean it must be, because you're right. Yeah, like every a good run of baddies like it and Christine, and sometimes they come back they're all just the same gang of like leather jacket wearing greased haired 1950s like bad guys.
Yeah, like Stand By Me, all of them.
Yeah.
Like the flipping damage that Stephen King did to the the 50s rock and roll doo-wop greaser community is horrendous. Like literally up until Stephen King turns up, flipping like greasers. It is Grease. It's flipping. It's James Dean. They're these like cool, iconic rebels, and like just from Stephen King writing the same character and all, by the mid 80s, it's the archetype of what a bully is.
Yeah, that's true. That's impressive. That you did
like
that.
you know when you get the Nickelodeon cartoon Doug, like
yeah. Yeah, that's really
like
that's
Stephen
true.
King wrote the same greaser bully character so many times, he turned it into a stereotype.
That's impressive that he is. I wonder if he thought that would be the way that he would like impact pop culture. It's like all these monsters he's written and stuff, but it's like, no, you're going to change the perception of guys in leather jackets. Like that's it, out the window.
I feel like by like at least the early 80s, when like you know like flipping Evil Dead's getting signed just because Stephen King says it's good and stuff like that. I feel like he's doing it on purpose by then. He's done it a lot. Like, and what was it like? You know, like he was in school like in the 50s, and so like you know we're only about 20, 30 years on. This guy who probably like what should we call it? Called Stephen King homophobic slur or something in 1958. Was probably still alive, seeing these come out every year, like, oh my god, he done it again.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. got misdirected there. I do find this people, but I do feel like what should we call it? It's an extension that I feel like there's a petty beef in the book with a Jewish stepfather.
Yeah. You know, it sounds like I'll need to. I'm definitely going to listen to the audiobooks. I'll need to watch out for that when I listen back to it because, yeah, like I said, you don't get not much time spent with a mum and dad. They don't really delve into that like past relationship at all in the film, so you don't really understand why it gets to Gage's funeral and they're just having this like fist fight in the middle of the church, which makes a lot more sense from the book.
Yeah, that's wild. That like previous like. You're introduced to the character. He started a scrap at his granddad's funeral.
I know, because they mention it like kind of in passing when Rachel goes away for Thanksgiving and she's like, well, it's a family holiday. And Lewis is like, well, that's why I'm not coming because your family hate me, basically. And then that's kind of it. And then, the first time we see him in person is when they're having the fight at the funeral.
Just swinging at a child's funeral. That's like... That's renegade. Like you don't have a fight at a funeral. You have a fight at a wedding. Weddings are fighting occasions. Flipping like maybe it's a British thing and it's the other way around in America.
Yeah.
Like flipping like funerals are like really dark and then everyone gets pissed and have a great time.
Yeah.
Certainly in the working class. Or maybe that's just a northern thing. Maybe it's a Welsh thing. Maybe it's a Scottish thing. I don't know. But like funerals. Much better time than weddings a lot of time, unless you're getting married.
Yeah. No, that is true.
Yeah. So let's talk about the much maligned and again didn't get around to rewatching it in time, but the remake. What are your feelings on that?
I was super excited when it came out. I'm not a person that's ever like, oh god, another remake. Like I'm always excited when there's a remake because like it's much like the book being good and then the first film being good, it could potentially give you another piece of media around that story that's also good that you can watch. So I was really hyped. I think I was quite disappointed by it on a couple of levels. I think one, they tried too much to be like, this is a creepy thing right from the offset. We're going to have these kids going to the cemetery. They're wearing creepy masks. They're doing a weird ceremony. Whereas I think the Mary Lambert film is like, everything's like, most of it's in like such bright sunshine and like really nice and stuff. Like it's meant to be this weird thing that pops up one day in like a normal community and stuff kind of starts going wrong. So I think they tried too hard to push the like creepy angle, like kind of right from the start. And then I also didn't like the fact that they swapped which kid dies because I think some of my favorite bits from the original film and the book is the stuff with Ellie, like after Gage dies, because it's kind of implied that Ellie's a bit psychic. Maybe she has dreams of stuff that always happens. She kind of knows that stuff's going wrong. Victor
I've heard in the wider scheme of things, the theory is that she has the shining.
Yeah, and I mean that would make sense because she's always right on the money, and she speaks to Victor. He goes and speaks to her and stuff, and tries to give her information as well. And when they swap which kid dies, you don't get that with Gage because Gage is too young. I think they try it a little bit, but it's not the same. And then so we don't really get the whole scene with like Rachel going to live with her parents and then having to rush back because they kind of just go away in the car and then turn around and come back. Instead, so they cut out that whole chunk as well at the end, which is like one of my favorites, where Rachel's just basically like trying to like plow across the country and go home and like save her family. And then I think Ellie, being the kid that was dead, she was just like too self-aware and too like smug with it almost. It was weird. She was like her and like her dad and then her mum eventually were just having like full-blown conversations, whereas I think the whole thing about Gage being so young and like innocent and then coming back as this kind of creepy thing was more terrifying. I don't think it was as scary. So I think I read somewhere that Stephen King was like happy for them to make that change, and I think it kind of sounded interesting in theory, but it sort of stripped away a lot of my kind of favorite parts with Rachel and Ellie, and it's like zombie Ellie's just around for too long at the end of the film, and she's too like self-aware and things, and she's just they make too much of a character there. I think Gage, like dead Gage, is in the film for like 15 minutes maybe. Like he dies halfway through, and then there's the whole chunk where Lewis like digging him up and things. So he's not in it very much. He's not this like huge character, whereas I think they tried to make her too much of a main character, and again make it too like constantly scary. And I was disappointed because I really wanted it to be I wanted it to be good because it is one of my favorites, and it was just a bit like I don't know.
One of those like that. There's like if you want to make it different, you don't have to like make big changes. You could just focus on other elements from the book, like Wendigo and shit.
Yeah, well, I know because I remember when the first trailer kind of came out, it kind of hinted that we're going to go into more of that stuff that kind of happens in the woods past the deadfall. There's kind of like, I think you see a glimpse like something that could be the Wendigo or something. So I was like, oh, that would be cool if they go more into like the kind of lore of it. And then they didn't really. I did really like John Lithgow as Judd. I thought he was great. But yeah, that was that was kind of it. I've watched it a couple of times. I went to see the cinema, and I think I've watched it a couple of times since. And yeah, I think it's one of those ones where I wonder if it just came out on its own as a film, would I be fine with it? But I think because I have such a strong thing to particularly like Rachel's that whole last chunk of the film where Rachel and Lewis and they're doing things separately and they're trying to like meet in the middle. That whole final act's like wiped out in the remake. It's totally different, and I think it that makes me really sad because that's my favorite bit.
Yeah, like I think like what should we call it in Mary Lambert's version, like Church does a lot more of the work to like set things up, whereas like flipping Ellie's just like they're being weird halfway through, and like I think it's a change. Like I can understand if someone pitched it, why it'd be a good idea, because Ellie, she's a bit older, she can communicate and all of this. Like so, like the idea of swapping them, I think it's solid, but I don't think they stuck the landing on it.
No, I think it could have been really interesting. I think maybe if they'd even made Gage a little bit older so that he could have played more of the part that Ellie did in the original film with the kind of psychic link and things, might have been a bit more interesting. But I think, yeah, they just kind of, shot themselves in the foot a wee bit because they did kind of cut that out. And I do think kind of swapping, I think it was an interesting, I was going to say, I think it was an interesting surprise, but they sort of basically blew it at the trailer that that's what was going to happen. It would have been more fun if I just went to the cinema. This is why I don't watch horror trailers very much anymore.
Yeah, they blow it in the trailer, and it was also like flipping. I think that might have been one of the moments where I just completely stopped caring about spoilers because like flipping. Like I think that was peak era for people like being like terrified of spoilers. Like I think Game of Thrones was still going on and all this shit, and fucking like so like I'd be listening to podcasts which were all like audio at the time kind of thing, like American like horror podcasts, and like they're trying to talk about like they're trying to like duck around it in a way like there's there's a spoiler in the trailer, so don't look at the trailer. Okay, good, I won't, because they kind of give away an important point when one character dies instead of another. I'm like, well, it can only be those. It's not going to be like fucking zombie fucking Judd going, I'm here to fix your radiator. Like there's only one swap that could happen.
Yeah. No, I think it was. I didn't just like kind of write it off right from the start because I did want to see what they did with it. I think it was just sad that the kind of bits that they ended up cutting out. I really don't like Rachel's character at all in the remake either. I just don't think she's like kind of as sympathetic, and I don't think you kind of see her point of view. Though I do love the whole bit with Zelda in the remake, like in the dumbwaiter. Like I think they did quite a good job of giving us like a different kind of Zelda scene. The fact that she like crashes down the dumbwaiter, I thought was good. There's a lot of interesting like kind of imagery and things in it, and little bits on their own that do work well. But yeah, it's a weird one. And then Bloodlines was like a prequel to that version, so it changed all the timelines. It wasn't World War II anymore, it was Vietnam, and they kind of changed stuff as a result from that. And maybe Bloodlines suffered a little bit because it was trying to keep up with that continuity, I'm not sure as well. But I will most definitely watch the remake a handful more times in my life, definitely, because I just enjoy Pet Cemetery related stuff so much. But I just don't think it like hits. It's not as scary, and there's not as much focus on the grief and the family, which I think is the main sort of point of the book. And I think the original film does that really well. And the remake just sort of felt very blue tinged horror of that specific time period, rather than anything special.
Yeah. I feel like if they'd like sort of tried to go more folk horror with it, like, you know, bring in more of the that stuff, and like, you know, make it kind of like Stephen King's The Vivitch or something, like, you know, if they'd done that, they could have like had their cake and eaten it a bit more. Like, you could have had like, because then you could get away with the creepy kids from the early.
Yeah, I'd like the idea of them exploring, because obviously Judd talks about, you know, it's been a thing that's been ingrained in the kids for ages, so it does make sense that there was like the kids had this like ceremony and things. But yeah, like you said, I think if we'd been able to explore rather than it just being like it felt like it was just for the sake of, so we can use this on the posters and so that Ellie can have the mask later, rather than like kind of delving into it a bit more. So yeah, I think that would have been more. I think the whole lore around the cemetery and Ludlow and the past things that have happened are the really kind of interesting bit, rather than yeah, just something that looks a bit creepy for the sake of it, which is kind of what it felt like.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think we're like coming up to the hour mark here. So, have you got any like kind of final thoughts you want to leave us with on Pet Sematary?
I mean, I just think I think it's impressive that, you know, Stephen King always says this is one of like the darkest ones that he's ever written, and I guess because it primarily just deals with like child death and things that affect him family, rather than anything too fantastical. Because even though obviously Lewis then goes and like buries his kid and he comes back from the dead, most of the horror is based around the fact that Gage dies in the first place and how the family sort of deals with that. And I think it's pretty impressive that Stephen King thinks this is one of the darkest ones he wrote, where there's not really that much actual anything like supernatural or anything gory or anything that's happening that's scary. And I think that's why it continues to work. There's no big monster with bad effects or anything in the film that would age it too badly. Though there was one particular bit with a Gage puppet jumping out an attic hatch, which didn't look the best. But aside from that, I think it's one of those stories that'll just stay scary like forever, because it's it's stuff that people are always going to be afraid of.
Yeah. It's I think the thing that sort of permanently things is like pretty much every, like, apart from like things like Carrie and that, flipping it, like the part of himself that Stephen King put into his books up till that point, it was always, oh, the main guy is a writer from Maine. Whereas this, it's about the personal part he's putting in is being a parent.
Yeah, no, it's great, and yeah, it is hits me even harder now that I am a mum. But it has always been quite terrifying, and it's one of his most enjoyable books to read, and I think it's probably one of his best, because right up till the end, like the last, I think it's like paragraph in Pet Sematary is like one of my favorite Stephen King book endings ever. I know he gets a lot of shit for having terrible endings, but the just Rachel coming back and she says like darling, and it's like her voice was like full of like dirt and gravel or something. You could just imagine, and then it just finishes. You don't know what happens. You don't know if Louis dies or if he doesn't. And it's just, I think, just the whole book is fantastic. Whereas some Stephen King of the longer novels can be a bit questionable in the middle towards the end, but I think Pet Sematary just nails it the whole way through.
Yeah, flipping like it's one of those things, like, you know, I'll flipping always encourage people to do better in their life, but at the same time, if I ever met Stephen King, I think I'd have to like tap up a dealer and go on. You've got one more good one in you, haven't you? Go on, lad. Have a little stripe. You've got a good one in you. Like, one more before you go.
Yeah, God.
Yeah, terrible thing for me to say that, but nonetheless. Okay, so Kim Morrison, thank you so much. This has been absolutely fantastic. Like flipping, this is how good it's been. Like, I'm quite hyped to watch the remake again that I've just been saying that I don't even like. Like for this conversation's got me hyped to watch it again for the first time in a minute. So that's how you know it's been a great conversation. So yeah. So where can people get a hold of you if you want people getting a hold of you, or at least
Yeah.
getting a hold of you?
You can get me. I'm on Twitter. I'm at Wicked Sister 69, which was a bad email choice when I was about 15, and I've just stuck with it. And you can get me on Instagram and TikTok. I'm at Little Red Horror. I just made a TikTok about Saltburn where I was like, here's all my thoughts on Saltburn, and it got 1 million views, which was absolutely bananas because all my other TikToks are like 300 views. So if you want to read my daft thoughts about Saltburn, you can go and see my TikTok.
I certainly do. I want all the Saltburn takes. This is a pro Saltburn podcast.
Nice.
But yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This has been brilliant. I've been Canal, and this has been Sinister Cinema. Fuck you, Starling Bank. Yeah, I know you haven't listened this far in it. Fuck you, Starling Bank. Yeah, I fucking say shit like this. I don't even fucking regret it. Pricks, cunts. Fucking hell, man. Like, how are you going to fucking question me by the person who you have questioning for fucking sex worker policies? Have you seen how ugly I am? Do I look like I do sex work? Fuck you, you pricks. I've got a better account somewhere else. You're not the only ones offering fucking free transfers. Cunts! Follow me at Sinister Cinema. Safe.